If one thing is clear, it is that a large sector of the population likes horror films. But why do they come to like horror films? The sensations associated with fear are not usually associated with pleasure, but rather the opposite. Fear is produced by a psychological response that appears when the possibilities of seeing our life threatened by some danger are relatively high and, therefore, we learn to avoid it. However, in the cinema, people invest money and time in being exposed to situations that produce terror. Why does this happen? Many may think that it is due to a lack of empathy or a sadism that is politically incorrect and that, once a year, may come to light. However, there are theories that go beyond this view. All fictional narration includes a plot and characters. The objective of the screenwriters with these two elements is, on the one hand, to articulate the plot to induce an aesthetic pleasure in the spectator, a plot that engages. To do this, on the other hand, it is necessary to work on the characters, so that the viewer can put himself in their place and live their adventures in the first skin. Therefore, unlike what one might think, it is a process of empathy. However, in every story there are protagonists and antagonists, and we do not empathize with one and the other in the same way. Moreover, the same context of events that involves the protagonist is undesirable for the viewer. That is, no one would really like to live the same situations that happen in a horror film. Dispositional theory explains that after the first scenes of seeing the characters on screen, we make very quick moral assessments of who is the good guy and who is the bad guy. In this way, we assign the roles to the plot and organize the expectations of what will happen. It is clear to us that the characters who are evaluated positively will begin to experience misfortunes, thus generating compassion towards them and gaining empathy and identification. In this way, we act as moral observers throughout the film, assessing whether the facts are good or bad, and whether they happen to good or bad people, creating what is called emotional dispositions. When you develop a positive emotional disposition towards a character, you want good things to happen to him and you fear that bad things might happen to him. However, it also has a counterpart, since if the affective disposition generated is negative, it is expected that those negative acts developed by the character will have their consequences. That is to say, as long as we value positively, we expect that the character will do well, while if it is negatively, that it will do badly. A principle of justice. In this sense, the attraction to these films is given by their resolution. Throughout the minutes, expectations are generated as to how each other character's story should end, so that when it is resolved, it gives us pleasure. The end of the films managed to satisfy the anguish generated by the expectations, fulfilling that end we were waiting for. As examples, these two processes of affective and negative disposition are exploited in horror films. In Scream, the same protagonist is maintained throughout the sequels, maintaining empathy and a positive emotional disposition towards her and the expectation that she will survive. Another case is that of Carrie, in which we develop such compassion that we do not judge the final scene as unfair. And there are also cases of the opposite process, as in The Last House on the Left, where we produce a great negative disposition toward the villains and desire their misfortunes, a feeling of revenge that is bliss. However, the theory of the disposition does not explain why we like to feel uneasy having expectations contrary to the evaluation of the character. If we want good things to happen to that good girl, why do we enjoy when bad things happen to her? Many investigations reveal a principle of hedonic investment in the assessment of dramatic characters. The more suffering is caused in the viewer, the better his or her assessment of the film. This is due to a psychologically based process that is explained by the theory of transference of activation. This theory states that as events contrary to our expectations occur, empathic discomfort is generated and, in turn, a consequent psychological reaction. This reaction increases as the problems for the protagonist accumulate, while at the same time the hope of our initial expectations continues to be maintained. In this way, the difficulties that appear on the hero's path increase the discomfort we feel and the fear that it will not have a happy ending. However, our hope in this remains. In this way, we are reacting to the anguish of the contrariness of both paths. We want good things to happen at the same time that only bad things happen. When the end is reached and the expectations are fulfilled, despite the fact that it is a positive emotional experience, we still maintain the psychological activation produced by the misfortunes, since their elimination is not immediate. This is how these excitement residues are maintained during the outcome, increasing the pleasure of the end. Say that little by little, although we hope it will end well, we get used to misfortunes occurring, so that when we have the happy ending, that expectation fulfilled, we enjoy it more, because we were more predisposed to the opposite. It is a process of habituation towards misfortunes that make us sensitive to success. The greater the intensity of residual excitement prior to the outcome, the greater the pleasure it causes us. That is, the more tension appears in the moments before the end, the more we enjoy it. In this sense, it explains how horror films are articulated. At the beginning, there is a presentation of the characters, and the first victims do not interfere much in the course of events. There are many films in which the protagonist discovers the bodies of his companions at the end, in the midst of the chase and achieving the climax of tension. Therefore, the tension is managed in a progressive way, gradually increasing before the end. Therefore, although it seems it is due to a lack of empathy, the processes that lead to a passion for terror are quite the opposite. The aim is to facilitate the process of empathy, to raise a series of misfortunes and to play with the expectations of the outcome formed by the spectator.